The Fallout series is rife with interesting characters, out-of-this-world locations, and fantastic stories, so it's no surprise that a lot of those Iceberg photos have been showing up about the Fallout series. Now, there's been a few videos about Fallout icebergs. I'm not claiming I can do it any better, but a lot of people wanted to see my take on them, so this is the Fallout iceberg. Carrying gold in Elijah's head refers to when you are in the Dead Money DLC and you actually destroy Father Elijah, you're able to place all of the gold bars onto his corpse, and then if he's decapitated, you can use the pickup command, the grab command in the Fallout game in New Vegas. Well, it's in most of the Bethesda games is why I said it that way. And then carry the head to the door. I typically just sneak past Elijah. It may take a few times, but you can I usually have 100 sneak and I'm using a stealth boy and I take off all of my heavy armor. You can sneak out, but carrying gold in Elijah's head is something that a lot of people do to get all of the gold bars out of the Sierra Madre. The Fallout 4 Pip-Boy games are referring to the games that you can play on your Pip-Boy that are found on holotapes around the Commonwealth. There's Atomic Command, Grognak and the Ruby Ruins, Pip-Fall, Red Menace, Zeta Invaders, and with the Automatron DLC, you also get a game called Automatron. These are based off of various arcade games of the past, Pitfall, Donkey Kong, Space Invaders, but you can play them on your Pip-Boy, and they're kind of like a game within a game, so I understand why people find them interesting, but they're just little holotapes you can find, and little ways to pass the time when you're hanging out in the wasteland. The Dead Money bad ending is referring to if the courier reads the last terminal entry inside the Sierra Madre. If you do that, the courier ends up trapped inside of the vault inside Sierra Madre, and they eventually will pass away in there. They will die inside. They are condemned to live the rest of their life trapped and afraid inside the vault of the Sierra Madre. So if you do read the last, there's like a few entries, but if you read the last one, it's meant to be a trap for Sinclair, and yeah, you get got. Gorilla in the Institute is referring to the gorillas that we can find inside the Institute in Fallout 4. These are synth gorillas, and they're very similar to Gen 3 synths, where they're very realistic in appearance. They act like real gorillas, but that's about as far as it goes. They made these gorillas. I know that there's ways that you can get them into your settlements, and of course there's ghoul-rillas that appear later, I believe with DLC, but that's a whole different story. These are just synth animals, like a lot of the synth animals that the Institute has made, crows, Brahmin, and gorillas here. But it is interesting that you can get a tamed gorilla for your settlement if the RNG is shining just right on you throughout the game. Regardless, yes, they're synth gorillas and they live inside the Institute. The Montana bunker is actually pretty interesting because it's something that you would never have heard inside Fallout 3, but due to the game files being able to be pillaged through with the GEC and everything like that, we are able to find, every file in the game. And it refers to something that Elder Owen Lyons is speaking about with the Brotherhood, and he mentions a Montana bunker. So people speculate that, there's even more Brotherhood presence out there, and it's confirmed here in Fallout 3, and it is supposed to be in the game. It's not supposed to be cut, but there's like a missing reference or something like that in the coding, so we're not supposed to hear it. As he says, "Brothers, as we take our meal this day, let us reflect upon the words of Elder Patroclus of the Montana bunker. It is in service of steel and guardianship of one's brothers that each man finds his purpose. My friends, stand with your brothers, guard them." Of course, it goes on, but yeah, the Montana bunker is mentioned, so people naturally are curious about what it is. But that's all the information we have, is that it's bugged out, so you don't even get to hear it in Fallout 3. Would have been overlooked for years, but somebody did find mention of it, and that's all the information we have. Nuking yourself in the Yanks seems to be referring to using one of the tactical nukes on yourself, perhaps while still inside the submarine. I'm not too sure exactly what people mean by this and why it's added to the Iceberg. You can use this as a weapon, and it usually doesn't work out right. But when they add in the Yanks, it's like, okay, so just doing it to itself, like, I guess it's pretty interesting. But other than that, it might just be referring to the use of that tactical nuke. But yeah, you can use that. Perhaps you can do it on yourself. I haven't seen anybody talking about nuking yourself with it. So this is a strange addition to me, other than the fact that you can use those bombs as an attack after you complete the quest that is tied to the submarine. Getting killed by Braun in Tranquility Lane, I believe, is referring to any of the times that you might piss Betty off and she just nukes you inside of the simulation. If you die in the simulation, you apparently die in real life, so I believe that's why this is kind of on the list. Also, it is a bit murky because you can do the Chinese invasion, which I guess they don't really attack you, but there's a couple of different ways that you can die in Tranquility Lane, but pissing off Braun is definitely one of them. But yeah, the lone wanderer can get killed by Braun in Tranquility Lane. Past that, I don't see much of a mystery behind this. That's pretty much cut and dry. Piss off Betty, you get nuked in the sim. Fallout 76 was developed by a B team, I believe is referring to the fact that the Austin studio is the one that mainly handles 76, though there are a few different studios that work on Fallout 76, and so people are calling it that. The only thing I could find in relation to Bethesda and a B team is like a Reddit post of somebody being shitty about the development of Fallout 76, so I guess that's what it is. It's the B team because it's not, you know, Bethesda Softworks as an entire company working directly on it. Fallout 76 has stopped being my cup of tea, and I never really super got into it. But people do work hard on it, so it's you know, if it is something you like, that's fine. The B team, other than this Reddit post that I found, I don't see any other reference to a quote B team from Bethesda. Though maybe somebody at Bethesda used that terminology. I'm not sure. 200 Endings refers to a quote from Todd Howard during the development of Fallout 3, where he was quoted saying, "We are over 200 endings, and that is not an exaggeration." Of course, it was an exaggeration, and Todd's been known to exaggerate now that we have hindsight. But during this time, it was easy to believe that there was something being cooked up that spectacular. Now, 200 endings seems a bit overkill, so even that seems like a stretch, but I understand why people were excited of like, oh, the possibilities. Now, there's a lot of possibilities in Fallout 3, there's a lot of ways to end that game, and there's a lot of endings being told during the story depending on your choices. But, obviously, we don't have 200 endings. But, that's Todd Howard for you, and it's one of my favorite quotes from the man himself. Fallout 1 bad ending is referring to when you get dipped in the vats at Mariposa military base. So this is actually a really easy ending to get, and there are people who speedrun it just like they would the main actual game. But if you just run to Mariposa and get caught by the mutants and submit to the lieutenant, you can easily get the Fallout bad ending. And this sees you getting dipped in the vats. You tell the mutants and the master where Vault 13 is. They go and they wreck up the place and they kill people and take people to dip in the vats, and it's a big terrible thing that happens all because you just didn't want to fight back to the mutant menace, and you openly gave up the information. It's actually pretty cool. This is one of the first games I played where you could truly just get an ending like this, and it always surprised me when I was younger and I'd play through Fallout. I remember when, you know, I'd first see something like that, I was always like, oh my god, like when the mutants stormed Vault 13, it was very, oh wow, that's it was pretty crazy. So that's the Fallout 1 bad ending. But yeah, the first Fallout's ending where you can become a mutant yourself, even though you don't get to enjoy the aftermath of that experience. Obsidian's Metacritic bonus is referring to the fact that Fallout New Vegas got an 84 Metascore, when if it got an 85, it would have got a bonus. The team would have gotten a bonus financially from Bethesda, and because it only got an 84, 1 point away, it was they were denied the bonus. Lots of developers that worked on Fallout New Vegas and that have worked for Obsidian have come out and said that that was a completely fair situation. They didn't hit the Metascore. I'm sure deep down, I mean, you're a human. You're going to be disappointed that that didn't happen. But I don't think they were mad at Bethesda because, like, it was 1 point off or whatever. They just that was how it went. Chris Avalon, one of the leads on Fallout New Vegas, has gone on record of saying multiple times that he thought they were treated incredibly fairly by Bethesda, and that he enjoyed his experience working on the game and working with them. And that the Metacritic bonus was a fair situation. Now, what your opinion of it is up to interpretation. If you think that's unfair, 1 point off, and that the developers deserve that bonus, that's up for you to have that opinion. But know that most of the developers, at least that I've talked to, don't seem to have a problem with this situation, and there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of, infighting like people daydream about when it comes to those two studios. Zetans caused the Great War is, of course, referring to the alien race in the Fallout series being the cause of the Great War, which was the big atomic war that happened that kicked off why we are in the apocalypse. Kicked off everything we see in the Fallout series. The Great War is really the catalyst, and there is a theory going around that the Zetans caused the war, perhaps working with Vault-Tec, which we'll get to in a little bit, or the Enclave, but yeah, that's a theory out there. It's not that it doesn't completely make sense, because, sci-fi, anything's possible, but Fallout isn't necessarily that kind of a sci-fi, so I've always looked at the Zetans causing the war as not really a plausible theory, because there's so many more, much more, that made much more sense, conspiracy theories behind the Great War, that Zetans just kind of, is probably why it's at the top of the iceberg. It's a fun theory. It's fun to think about aliens and stuff doing that, and we do see aliens throughout the series, starting with the first Fallout, but Bethesda made them a little bit more canon than they were before, in the way that they made them completely canon when before they were just kind of like a side tongue-in-cheek reference. But I don't think that the Zetans caused the Great War as a personal theory of mine. But yeah, that's a theory out there. They caused it to kick off the events of the apocalypse and then maybe study people. But that's the theory for you out there. Operation Anchorage was propaganda, is referring to, we see it in the DLC. You go through Operation Anchorage. It's this big training sim for the frontline war, the resource wars with China that are taking place. The front lines being Alaska, mainly Anchorage. Thus the name. So the reason this is being called into question is because people think that because it's skewed through the American government and this is a training sim, that the things that we see in Operation Anchorage are likely propaganda to rile people up, and or you know what propaganda does. And coming from the U.S. government, especially in this world, in the Fallout universe, it absolutely tracks that this is probably over-exaggerated. The events of it are very, very Americanized and patriotic, and showcase a lot of inconsistencies that would make somebody believe that this is likely just propaganda from the U.S. government to rile up and recruit soldiers. So that is what people are referring to when they say that Operation Anchorage was propaganda. 16 times the detail refers to a meme that got started from another Todd Howard quote about Fallout 76, when he said that 76 would have 16 times the detail. Just something that seems so funny when you listen to it back, but when you're listening to somebody talk about a project that they're working on, it's like, oh, okay, like you kind of understand what they're saying, but it's a weird metric to try to measure 16 times the detail of Fallout 4. Or of Skyrim or whatever, but regardless, it's just another meme from something Todd Howard said about a project that he was working on. We are now in the second tier of the Iceberg, and we're starting with Bill Calhoun. He was a physician for the followers of the apocalypse and was around Caesar before he adopted the moniker of Caesar when he was still Edward Saulo. So The only time we really see Bill Calhoun is on the back of a Daenerys, the Legion coin, alongside Joshua Graham and Caesar. They showed up. They got captured by the Blackfoot tribe. They were held for ransom, and it was widely regarded, especially from Joshua Graham, that Calhoun was a good man and Caesar was so, and we know how the rest of that goes. But yeah, we see him on the back of the coin, and he's highly regarded amongst almost anybody you talk to that knew him, but assumed that he's no longer with us. Throwing weapons in Fallout 3 is referring to the fact that in all previous Fallout games, it was a skill. Throwing was a skill. Fallout 2. And then once we got to Fallout 3, it was removed and mixed in with like explosives and other skills like that. So we still have weapons that can be thrown in Fallout 3. They're just put into different skills, like grenades with explosives. So it's just not called throwing anymore. The Forecaster is a psyker is referring to a child named Clay, who is called the Forecaster in Fallout New Vegas, who is apparently psychic. He wears a psychic nullifier on his head, which is something that we saw in the first Fallout when it came to trying to block the Master's psychic abilities when you were in his area. But he uses it, the Forecaster uses it as a type of medicine to kind of keep his stuff at bay, so it doesn't he gets headaches from it and everything. But yeah, he's a psychic, and he can tell the courier different forecasts about their future. It's a very neat inclusion because it doesn't go over the top. There's been psychers or psychics and the supernatural in Fallout before, and when it's done with nuance like it is here with the Forecaster, and when it's done very like in a really small way where it's you can completely miss this character, I think that adds a bit of mystique to the Fallout series that I enjoy when it's not overboard with it. But yeah, the Forecaster almost certainly is a psyker. I would describe him as a psychic and very interesting to talk to. The Prydwen terminal logs or propaganda is likely referring to, it's all obviously referring to terminal logs inside the Prydwen, but it's also probably referring to Elder Maxon's backstory, which a lot of people have problems with, especially because its relation to King Arthur and the Holy Knights and stuff. It has a lot of tongue-in-cheek like embellishments in it for sure, but I believe it also extends to how Sarah Lyons was dispatched from the Brotherhood as well, because we have like a couple of sentences where it's like, yeah, she died in battle, and a lot of people have problems with the fact that the Brotherhood's so prestigious that if someone that high up in their ranks actually died in battle, that there would probably be much more fanfare for them when it came to their tribute in their terminal entries. But yeah, it's referring to a lot of the seemingly embellished backstories and things of that nature that can be found in the Prydwen terminal entries. Starfleet in Fallout 2 is likely referring to the Federation crash site, the special encounter we can find in Fallout 2 when you're adventuring around the wasteland. There was some cut content like a phaser that was going to be there. It was going to be a really powerful laser weapon that would also further the Star Trek reference. But yeah, it's a reference to Star Trek. There's like red shirts on the ground. The numbers on the side of the shuttle have ties to Adani 2. There's just a lot of stuff going on at this encounter. But people are wondering, like if it has any weight in the Fallout universe with like this crossover, or like a Star Trek being canon in the Fallout. It's special encounters are widely regarded in the classic Fallout games as not being canon. But if you want to have fun with it, there's a few of them that are pretty crazy. If you want to have fun with it and say it's canon, that's totally fine. Who cares? It can be in your head canon if you want it to be. But yeah, it's a reference to Star Trek, so if you enjoy that show, here's a nice little nod to it. Camp Willow is referring to a mentioned location in Fallout New Vegas, and it was going to be a little southeast of the fort. This was an NCR military camp that was at Willow Beach in Arizona. But after the first battle of Hoover Dam, the Battle of Willow Beach happened, and this caused the camp to be destroyed. The NCR was then kind of like shoehorned back to the east side of the Colorado River, and we see on a map an early map of Fallout New Vegas, Camp Willow on the east border of the map. So this was a location that was likely going to be in Fallout New Vegas, but for whatever reason it was either cut or the map just didn't go that far out. The Basincreek building being Obsidian's HQ, it seems to be a reference to the fact that there was multiple little Easter eggs that Obsidian left in this building that seem to coincide with real life things that happened to their offices over the years, like bathroom flooding a bunch of times. There was a car that crashed into the building. There was an ant problem. They had a bunch of ants one time, a rat dying behind a wall. And the wiki will even tell you, like, somebody punched a hole in the men's bathroom or something. So it's like there's a lot of these references inside the Basincreek building, which led people to believe that perhaps they modeled it after themselves. I wouldn't know. I've never been inside the Obsidian HQ, but I think it's a fun little tongue-in-cheek thing for developers to, add their own little inside jokes to some locations in their games so that they have something to go back to and remember as well with the team that they created this masterpiece that is New Vegas with. The children of Adam are psychers is obviously referencing that the children of Adam could be psychers. I don't know if they're referring to the entire group, the entire following as being psychers. That's definitely not true. But maybe perhaps some of the upper echelon of the religion or the group or the cult, whatever you want to call it, could perhaps be that way. I know there's a lot of people that ask about, like, oh, why are these characters seemingly immune to radiation? Are they being protected by Adam? Is Adam real? These are questions that the game intentionally leaves a little open, though for people that have dived more into it, there are more concrete conclusions that you can come to. And there's probably some mystique that happens with the upper echelon of this group. So I would say up at the top, perhaps, because psychers do exist in this universe, and I could see them gravitating to, something like the children of Adam. But there are people that have dived way deeper into the children of Adam's whole deal, than I ever have. But I would assume that since psychers exist and this is such an organized situation, you would have to think that a couple of them would have made their way to the top of this group by now. Fake Vault 13 is a location in Fallout 2. This is a cave you can get with a holo disc. You can buy it from Merc in the New California Republic for like $1,000. And yeah, it's just a little fake Vault 13 tourist trap situation. And not necessarily worth the money on face value, but it is still a neat location. And here it is on the Iceberg. It is quite missable. This is something that even people who play through Fallout 2 a lot might not have seen. So here it is, fake Vault 13. The Chosen One is canonically a porn star is referring to the fact that we meet Bruce Isaac in Fallout New Vegas, who talks about Mr. Bishop. And this Mr. Bishop that he's referring to seems to only be able to come into existence if the Chosen One impregnated John Bishop's wife or his daughter Angela. Now, I'm on the fence with that because I feel like somebody else could have done that, but it is a bit of a tongue-in-cheek reference, and it's actually one of the only times, if you use this reference as canon, that we hear the Chosen One being canonically male. So that's interesting as well. But regardless, that is what people are referring to when they are saying that the Chosen One is canonically a porn star. Birds in Fallout 4 are Institute spies. This is real. This is a true thing. The crows you see around the Commonwealth, usually, maybe not all of them, but a lot of the time, they are recording and documenting things for the Institute. We can see this when you go into the Institute. I did a video about this that explains it in a little bit better detail. But when you go into the Institute, you can see a bunch of different monitors that are monitoring video for around the Commonwealth. And if you go to those locations in-game, where the camera would be, you see the birds instead. It's really quite interesting. It's a really nice thing that they have going on in the background in Fallout 4 that you might need to pay a little bit more attention to actually see it as you're playing through. But it's one of my favorite things about Fallout 4 and the Institute. Interplay's original Fallout 3 is referring to what we know as Van Buren. A lot of the design documents are out there. There's even a playable demo of Van Buren. You can find a ton of information, and a lot of the game doesn't necessarily coincide with Fallout New Vegas, but a lot of New Vegas takes place as if Van Buren happened, like the events of Van Buren happened. Not all of them, but some of them. So it's very interesting. There's actually a person named Adam Lacko out there who's trying to remake Van Buren or make Van Buren based on all of those original documents. And there's a few other projects out there as well. But yeah, Interplay was set to release, or was in process of making, a Fallout 3 that had a completely fleshed out story. They were good to go. They were in the process of making the game. And we know what happened after that. Interplay didn't do so hot, and eventually Bethesda would pick up the IP, which we'll talk about later because it appears again further on down the list. But yeah, Van Buren, definitely check it out. It's very interesting to see what they were going to do with their version of Fallout 3 versus what we got. So it's worth the look. Baja's Ghosts is referring to a line that Hanlon says when you talk to him through the NCR at Camp Gulf. When you talk to Hanlon, he mentions that NCR troopers are being sent down to Baja to chase, quote, ghosts. I think a lot of people ran wild with speculation over this, that there was some kind of big mysterious thing that the NCR is doing down there. But what I think Hanlon really means with this is that they're doing menial tasks. They're down there chasing nothing. They're down there chasing ghosts. And he doesn't maybe agree with the assignments that are getting put down there, because that whole area, the Baja area in the Fallout universe, is an absolute death sentence to go down to. It's incredibly ravaged by heat, just normal weather, but then you also have the post-apocalypse. You have all the things that brings in the Fallout universe with creatures and people and all kinds of stuff. It is a terrible, terrible place. So I believe that Hanlon's really just referring to they're down there chasing nothing. They're down there chasing ghosts. Fallout 4 wasn't going to have a female protagonist. Seems to be referring to a weird leak that came out way back before the release of Fallout 4, where someone who claimed to work on the game said that you can only be male in the main story. Obviously, we know that that isn't the case, and it seems completely out of place for not only a Fallout game, but for a Bethesda game to not give you the option to pick whatever gender you want to play as. So it's insane to me that people actually believed this. It even when reading it back, if you do find some of the posts about it, they got almost all the information incorrect when it came to Fallout 4's story, but also, got their attention by claiming that you weren't going to be able to play as a female, that you could only play as a male in the main story. Of course, that's not the case, and I don't think it would ever be the case in a Fallout game. Ever since the first Fallout, you've been able to pick what you want to play as, who you want to be, and I don't see that changing in any of the games in the series. Well, of course, you have Brotherhood, and even in Brotherhood of Steel, you could pick between male and female characters, so it just seems like an asinine thing to believe, but it's something that ran wild, and I think a lot of people jumped on the speculation train because they were worried about, a game that was coming out. We are now in the third tier of the iceberg, and Fallout 4 was originally going to be set in New York City, is based off the fact that when the game was being pitched, Emil Pagliarillo came to Bethesda with a design document that had a Fallout 4 taking place in New York. Now, of course, we know that Bethesda ultimately decided with Boston as the location using the Commonwealth, but interestingly enough, they did keep the New York design document on file, so maybe we'll see it with Fallout 5, maybe a spinoff, I doubt it, but it is still in the ether, it is still being kept by Bethesda, and that is what people are referring to when they say that Fallout 4 was going to be set in New York. It was just something that was pitched by Emil at the beginning of the design process of the game. Interplay's Fallout Online is referring to Project V13, more than likely. This is a Fallout game that was being produced by Chris Taylor, Marco Green, just a few of the people that were involved with the original Fallout, like Jason Anderson. They were making a massively online multiplayer Fallout game. This was also part of the lawsuit, the legal dispute with Bethesda Softworks, because Had they been able to produce something that Bethesda was okay with, this game would have been released. But because it wasn't in the time period that Bethesda wanted to, the rights fell back down to Bethesda. That's, again, it'll be brought up later on in the Iceberg, that whole legal battle. But that is what they're referring to with Interplay's online Fallout game. Horses in New Vegas is referencing the fact that horses appear in the All Roads comic, the little prequel All Roads comic that accompanied New Vegas's release. Chris Avellone has gone on record saying that it was a mistake that horses were featured in the comic, and there seems to be a lore reason that horses aren't in the Fallout universe, but it hasn't completely been explained. We do see the Giddy Up Buttercups in the Bethesda games, so we do know that the horses existed and were a part of human culture in this universe. But something after the bombs, horses just haven't been around. And so Chris Avellone has said that it is a mistake for those to have appeared in the comic book, not some kind of retcon or, pushing some kind of weird canon narrative about horses. But that is where this little fact of information, that's where it's coming from on the Iceberg. That's why there was speculation about it, is because they appear in the comic. But for all we know, horses are completely extinct in the Fallout universe post-bombs. Fallout Tactics 2 is a canceled sequel to, of course, Fallout Tactics. This was going to see the Midwest Brotherhood, after the Barnacky ending of Fallout Tactics, facing off against the Mutant Liberation Army. And they would have been... the Brotherhood would have broadcast their raids on the mutant base. It was a big, fun, new experience that they were going to be working on in this little environment they've created with Fallout Tactics. It looked like there was going to be an irradiated gek that was producing just terrible plants and fungus that were taking over the wasteland and spreading really quickly. And it was affecting animals and all kinds of shit. It was just taking over the wasteland, and the Brotherhood was, going to go take care of this irradiated gek and fight the Mutant Liberation Army. So it's a canceled sequel, and that's really what we know about it. A little bit of the story that was proposed. There has been things floating around of mutant crocodile concept art. Looks a lot like what we see later on in Fallout 4 with the Nuka World expansion, when we see gator claws. They're very similar looking to the concept art from Fallout Tactics 2. So perhaps Bethesda went a little further back to some of the concept art of canceled games and implemented some things that they found. The gator claws are pretty divisive, but I always thought they were a cool addition. And it seems that we may have even seen them a little bit sooner had Fallout Tactics 2 come to fruition. The next entry says Vault-Tec in Smash Bros, and I have to assume that they mean Vault-Boy in Smash Bros, because other than Vault-Boy, Vault-Tec's representation in Smash Brothers kind of ends there. Vault-Boy is a costume for your Mii that you can use in Smash Brothers, and that's about it. It's just a little reference, a little costume that you can get for your Mii inside of Smash Brothers. There's really no other weird lore behind it when it comes to Nintendo, other than the fact that they talk about Vault-Boy as if he's the Vault-Tec mascot. So they explain what Vault-Tec is, they make vaults for this and that. So, I mean, there's a little bit of a presence there, but not really in-game. You just have the costume of Vault-Boy. Though I do like to see Fallout being represented on such a ridiculous stage like Smash Brothers from Nintendo. It's really interesting to see that happen, and I was really excited to see that. The only instance of an Abraham and a Monte that I could find relating to the Fallout series were cut dialogue from Veronica about Elijah's fate. They would talk about a ghoul named Abraham, who everybody thought was dead, but then ended up being healed in this thing called the Crater, and then went north into ghoul country, and another ghoul named Monte, who the courier would have killed or trapped in a tunnel, and got this item called an accelerator. This is the only instance, the only mention of Abraham and Monte that I could find, so that is why it's on the Fallout Iceberg here. But other than that, that's about all we know about these two characters. It's fun to speculate of what were these two ghouls up to? What were we doing here? But This is all we got when it comes to the information for it. That's probably why it's ended up on the Iceberg. Kelogg is hiding in Nick's head is referring to a theory that Kelogg never really leaves Nick Valentine's head after you go through all your memories with Nick inside the memory den, and you end up talking to Nick afterwards, and Kelogg kind of speaks through him. And after that's removed, a lot of people think that, well, not a lot of, it's not like, oh, a lot of people think, but there's a theory out there that maybe perhaps Kelogg never actually leaves Nick's head. This isn't, explored in Fallout 4 past that quest line. I wish it was, actually. It's one of the better moments of the story in Fallout 4. It provides like some, unique moments that Fallout 4 has over the other series, and it would have been nice to explore it more, or to even have the option of keeping Kelogg in Nick's head as your own choice. That'd be interesting as well. Regardless, that is why it is on the Iceberg, is because there's a theory out there that maybe he never left. But again, we don't really see any actual evidence of this post the quest where we remove Kelogg from Nick's head. Fallout Extreme refers to a canceled squad-based shooter that was going to be released by 14 Degrees East and published by Interplay. 14 Degrees East was also the developer of Fallout Tactics, so it looks that Fallout Extreme was going to be a bit of a upgrade to that formula. Though they were working on a Fallout Tactics 2, it looks like this game would have been first and third person. It would have had many things that Fallout series hadn't really seen yet. But it was canceled back in November of 2000. A surprising amount of this game was brought into the world. Like the design documents are, they leaked back in 2010. A ton. I mean, the game never really got past this is the conception of the game. This is like what we are doing, what we want to do rather. But still, so much of the information, the Brotherhood of Steel factor, the characters, some of the locations and weapons and stuff. There's even some renders out there that we can see in this game, and it's awesome that so much of it's out there, because there would have been things like team death matches, capture the flags, squad death matches. I like stuff like that, and of course there would have been a single player campaign, I'd imagine, because there was a team campaign. So it would have been cool to be able to play a Fallout game, go through a campaign together, go out and do the death matches and the capture the flags and stuff like that. Of course, Fallout Tactics had a fun online counterpart. I remember playing it at Wizards of the Coast, landing with my friends at the mall, But it would have been cool to see the upgrade of that. But yeah, Fallout Extreme was canceled. There was a few canceled Fallout games that I think a lot of people would have liked, and many of them show up further on down the Iceberg. But 14 Degrees East was going to make Fallout Extreme, canceled November 2000. The Dinosaur Footprint is referring to a special encounter that can be found in the first Fallout game. The map name is actually just called foot.map, but we can see a giant dinosaur footprint. It's in the middle of the desert with a pile of goo in the middle. Of course, we can also find a stealth boy here. Now, a lot of people have attributed this because Tim Kaine, one of the creators of Fallout and someone who worked pretty exclusively on this game, has mentioned the time traveling aspect of the original story and how there was going to perhaps be dinosaurs as well, and that this a lot of people have tied together that this is probably an indirect homage to this being the case. And some people out there on the wiki have even speculated that it's a part of it's a reference to Marv Newland's short film Bambi Meets Godzilla, which can actually still be found on YouTube today. But I have my own theory about this, especially after talking to Tim myself, though I don't remember if I actually brought this up directly to him or not, the Dinosaur Footprint. I know that we talked about the original plot, and he actually stepped back from the original plot and was like, there's a lot of inconsistencies out there about what people believe that is. But I remember watching a big panel with him and Boyarsky, a couple other people, talking about the original plot, and it was all very interesting to me. Regardless of the original plot of Fallout, that had time travel and dinosaurs. This may be an homage to that, but after talking to Tim, it makes me feel a little bit more like this was supposed to scare the player into thinking that there was something much bigger out there. Tim really enjoys this. So a perfect example of this is when you first hear about the Deathclaws in the first Fallout, and then you see a Deathclaw and you kill the Deathclaw inside the cave for, you're looking for the caravans from the hub. You find the mutant holotapes, all that stuff, and you get back. But then it's like you hear like, oh, that was just the baby. He likes this idea of, oh, there's something bigger out there. And I believe this is also playing into that. Is it paying, like a tribute to those things that we mentioned earlier? Perhaps it is. I believe that there's enough evidence out there to kind of draw some of those conclusions. But I also like the idea that the devs are trying to make you feel like, oh, well, I don't want to run into whatever that is. So that's the Dinosaur Footprint from the first Fallout. Dead money is inspired by the Wizard of Oz is something that I find a bit odd. I don't see anybody online talking about this at all, though I can see some similarities, like the talking head of Elijah being like the talking head of the wizard and following the yellow brick road. You know what I mean? But no, I understand like some of the tones and some of the like content matter may be similar, but you're dealing with letting go and all this other kind of stuff. But one of the devs did a AMA on Reddit at one point and said that Dead Money was inspired by a movie called The Cube. It had a lot of inspiration from that. I had never seen the movie myself, but yeah, I can understand a bit of why somebody would try to draw the lines between, because a lot of people look at Wizard of Oz retrospectively as like kind of like a creepy movie with like a lot of lore, a lot of things going on in the background, especially with the Pink Floyd influence once the album that syncs up and all that other kind of stuff. Anyway, I understand that people try to draw ties to Wizard of Oz, and I can see them a little bit, but I don't see anybody talking about Dead Money being inspired by the Wizard of Oz. So I'm going to go ahead and say that though I can see a bit of why, I don't think that is necessarily the case, though I do, again, see some of the similarities that people could have drawn that conclusion from. Slave Suicide Bombers in New Vegas is likely talking about a conversation that we have with the Ranger in Novak, where he explains that he got messed up when a child from the Legion, like a child that the Legion has enslaved, ran up to him and had a grenade on them and blew up and injured a bunch of NCR troopers. Now, I don't see any discussion of this kind of thing being in-game as content you can find in-game, it being cut or otherwise, but we do hear about the Legion using those kind of tactics. So that's probably why it's on this iceberg. It sounds, it tracks for the Legion. This is something that has been reported of happening in real life in different conflicts around the world over the years, and it makes sense that the Legion would adopt such a barbaric way of handling things when it comes to the NCR. So we do hear about this, but we do not necessarily see it in game, and I can't find any references of anything like it being cut either. Fallout Brotherhood of Steel's God Weapons, I believe, is referring to the Insta-Kill Hammer and Insta-Kill Pistol that were cut from Fallout Brotherhood of Steel. Likely they weren't even actually cut. These were probably just developmental tools, and they weren't, purposed to be in the actual game. The Insta-Kill Hammer is identical to the Plasma Saw that we see in the game, but it deals like 1,000 damage. And the pistol's the same way, it deals like 1,000 damage. So it pretty much insta-kills anything that you shoot them with. You can't get these guns. Brotherhood of Steel isn't canon itself, and something cut from Brotherhood of Steel definitely isn't canon. But those are the weapons. It's just dev tools to make sure, I don't know, to get through areas to clear out NPCs very easily. We see that in a lot of games where there's like a dev pistol. New Vegas has one as well, where you just, instantly kill whatever you're aiming at. Fallout and the Elder Scrolls are connected has been a theory for years. Ever since Fallout 3 got released and was under the umbrella of Bethesda, everybody wanted to make the connection of Fallout and Elder Scrolls. Actually, from what I understand, at one point, Fallout 4 had a whole quest line where you go to Danvers, which was where the Salem witch trials happened, and we would have been able to discover a group of mutated children that had magical powers that coincided with the abilities from the Elder Scrolls. So there would have been even more connections. But one of the biggest ones that actually exists in-game is the fact that we can find Nirnroot in Fallout 4. And of course, we can find it in Elder Scrolls. So if you're wandering around Skyrim and you see Nirnroot, you can go to the Prydwen in Fallout 4 and see what looks to be the exact same plant. And we can even see that in Starfield as well. But we're going to get to that in just a little bit because Starfield appears on this iceberg as well. Regardless, many theories are out there on how the Elder Scrolls and Fallout could be connected. Bethesda denies that the universes are connected, but they do throw in little itty-bitty, Easter eggs to each other within each game, and most notably Nirnroot in Fallout 4. The Institute is based off the Nursery actually kind of has some weight in my opinion. The Nursery was going to be in Van Buren, the canceled Fallout 3 that Black Isle was working on, but we obviously didn't see that come to fruition. It looks pretty much like, a perfect paradise, a Garden of Eden in the middle of the wasteland built inside of a canyon, and seemed to be very similar to the way the Institute handles things, though I'm not quite sure on, like the synth aspect, though you can find pretty much all information about Van Buren online. Almost everything has been leaked about what was going to happen in Van Buren. But interestingly enough, Josh Sawyer, the game director behind Fallout New Vegas, said that Vault 22 is actually partially based off the Nursery. So we do get to see, a bit of what, like what they were thinking, even though I'd say Vault 22 and the Institute are a bit far apart and being comparable. So how could the Institute be based off that? I just think the Institute is like this pristine, science heavy, place in the wasteland that is an anomaly to the rest of the wasteland. And I feel like we would have seen that with the Nursery as well. So I understand, thinking that it's based off that. And I imagine that people who are writing for the mainline Bethesda games are going to be pulling from, cut stuff from older games, looking at what lore that they have that they can work with, and then trying to build things off of that and, get some good ideas for stuff to exist in the Fallout universe. This is probably one of them, but I'm guessing that is why this is on the iceberg. Vault-Tec caused the Great War is a huge theory out there. It's a theory that people have had for years and years since like the first Fallout game came out. That's always been part of the speculation. It really started kicking off with Fallout 3, if I'm being honest, because that's when we really start exploring the Vault experiments and things of that nature. But it can actually make a little sense when you think about it. When I talked to Tim Kaine, he kind of confirmed that China shot first by accident, or at least in his mind when he was thinking of the story of Fallout, is that China, kicked it off. But that doesn't mean that that's what's going on anymore, because Bethesda has every right to change anything they want in this game's lore, whether we, like it or not. But with something like that, shrouding it in mystery is nice, because we can always guess, who shot first and what happened here. But Vault-Tec causing the Great War can make some sense when you start to dive into the original lore of what was going on with Vault-Tec. We have Vault-Tec working with the Enclave with these Vault experiments, because the Enclave originally, I don't know if this is still Bethesda's plan, but originally the Enclave was going to build this starship, and it needed to be generational. They were going to be up there for hundreds of years, going to a new planet to try to settle and get off this rock that just got obliterated. And Vault-Tec was going to use most of these vaults to test the things that the Enclave would need in this starship situation. So when people say, Vault-Tec caused the war, it makes sense in a way of Vault-Tec maybe confusing some radars out in some other countries with the help of the Enclave, making other countries like China think that we are launching nukes when we haven't, thus making them nuke us and then us eventually nuking them. Things of that nature to kind of kick off this contract that they had with the Enclave. So it could possibly be, it's definitely a solid theory. Now, is it fact and lore and canon? No, not yet. We don't know. But it's interesting to think about, and it's completely in the realm of possibility for this to be like the actual thing that caused the Great War, in my opinion. We have now entered the fourth tier of the iceberg, and the first thing on the list is the Fallout movie. I've actually done a whole video on the Fallout movie, covering the entire script with the storyteller. I'll link that in a card on the video. Make sure to check that out. But It was a movie that was being talked about being produced back in the day. We're talking, late 90s, early 2000s, that seemed to follow the plot of the first Fallout game loosely and took a lot of liberties. So I highly suggest checking out my video where I go over the entire script of it. It's pretty entertaining, but that's the Fallout movie. That was what's going on. Now we have the Amazon show coming out, so we'll have some type of media like that when it comes to Fallout. But this Fallout movie was a trip. Check out my video if you want to really deep dive into what was going to be going on in this proposed movie about the Fallout series. Iron Mountain Enclave Outposts refer to something we can find in Fallout 2 when we go to Gecko's nuclear power plant. We see that it was Iron Mountain was connected to the PoseidoNet terminal, but it's listed as offline by the time we get there in Fallout 2. And there's a few Iron Mountains in the United States, actually one fairly close in Redding, but also out in Utah. But regardless, this is all the information we have on these Iron Mountain outposts. There's nothing else there. There's nothing else to speculate about. This is the only information we have about them, but they are mentioned in Fallout 2. Fallout 2's original TV town story is based on the fact that Fallout 2's first proposed story in its designs was centered around this TV town, and it was a town created by an intelligent computer that kind of focused on 50s and 60s TV shows, and everybody that lived there was an android. And everybody that lived around there wanted to be in there. It was very nice to live there. Plus, they had just remarkable technology, hence the androids. But this never got past the first design document, proposal for the Fallout 2 story. So there's really nothing to go off of from that. Some may say it's a cut location. I don't even qualify it as a cut location because I don't think that it got past the initial, hey, wouldn't it be cool if there was a town centered around this kind of thing. But that is the original TV town from the first Fallout 2 story. Starfield and Fallout are connected is an interesting theory because I don't know when this Iceberg was made, but I assume it was made before Starfield was actually released. Starfield and Fallout do have some connections, actually in the form of Nirnroot for one, because we can find Nirnroot on a planet in Starfield, but that's more of a connection to Elder Scrolls, but we do see that same plant in Fallout. We also see some Nirnroot being developed on a colony ship, so there's some more connections there, but there is actually a connection in the form of an Easter egg that I've covered before in Starfield that kind of connects Fallout, which is if we go to a clone laboratory out on this planet, we can find all these different clone pods. One of them is broken open, and it says it's to be delivered to pretty much Vault 108, and there's a lot of Gary references and everything like that. But that obviously is an Easter egg. I don't know if you want to count it as canon, but it's certainly interesting to think that this is the origin story of the Gary clones. Regardless, that's the only connection that I can really find between Starfield and Fallout. Earth in Starfield is pretty much, how would you say it? Inhospitable, but it's not in the same way that Fallout's world is inhospitable. Though Starfield takes place hundreds of years after Starfield would. It's more about the Earth becomes a dust ball after the everything that protects us from space, the ecosystem around our planet, the atmosphere just kind of jets off into space. So it's a different kind of lore. Regardless, there is that connection. So if you wanted to base that as canon, then Starfield and Fallout are connected. The Fort Abandoned design document is referring to a location we hear about in Lonesome Road in Fallout New Vegas. It was named after Eredish, the first leader of NCR, and Ulysses claims that the courier has been to that fort in the past. That's about all we really know about Fort Abandoned, but it was, like I said, originally known as Fort Eredish after the first leader, and then got changed to Fort Abandoned, so maybe it's called Fort Abandoned because everybody abandoned it. I know that it has ties to Van Buren in the design documents, which is more about what this Iceberg location is for. It's references to Van Buren, but Van Buren is a canceled game. It's not something we're ever going to see officially, though there are people, working on it. So maybe, this location will come to light based on its original design documents one day. But for now, that's what we know about it. New Vegas and Van Buren shared characters refers to there's actually a lot of shared things between New Vegas and Van Buren. I almost look at New Vegas as if Van Buren happened, what would have happened after that, because it doesn't copy Van Buren, it doesn't, take the story or anything like that, but it certainly adds on to the plot that they would have done if they would have made their Fallout 3 that a lot of these developers had worked on in the past. But one character in particular I want to highlight here is Joshua Graham. Joshua Graham was going to be in Van Buren as kind of like a cursed companion. He was the hanged man. You would have found him hung outside of a town, and when you got him down and everything and you made him your companion, he pretty much aggroed anybody that was close to you. He would spout insults at them, say really inappropriate things to get them pissed off, and then you'd always be in a fight with all these people, or he would just attack people as well. New Vegas, we obviously see a different type of Joshua Graham, the Burned Man, though I do think his Burned Man legacy would have also been the case in Van Buren, covered in bandages and everything. Regardless, there's a lot of shared things like that. Joshua Graham being, in my opinion, one of the biggest. So yes, New Vegas and Van Buren shared characters. Joshua Graham's at the top, but I encourage you to look even more at some of the shared relation, like the things that appear in New Vegas that were clearly thought about and brainstormed in Van Buren, and then added to the lexicon of Fallout lore through the Mojave. It's cool to see when you actually go through the Van Buren story. Fallout Shelter Online is exactly what it sounds like, Fallout Shelter Online. It may seem pretty innocuous when I mention it that way, but the reason I think it's on this Iceberg is because it's Chinese only. You can only play that in this region. And it's actually pretty fleshed out. There's a lot of characters that return from other games. There's a lot of locations and just things of that nature that it's like, man, that would have been kind of cool to check out for ourselves. But yeah, it's so far only Chinese versions available. But Fallout Shelter Online exists. And if you're into that kind of thing, it actually looks pretty cool. It looks like a pretty good upgrade from the one that we have worldwide, which, just standard Fallout Shelter. Regardless, there it is. And I've never played it. I know some people have found ways to, some people in the States have found ways to play it, and I'm sure millions around the world play it, but I myself have never checked it out. But there it is. The Chinese giant robot in Fallout 4 is referring to a poster that we can find where it says, "Their war machine is mobilizing. Let's prepare ours." This, I believe, has caused speculation that China might have their own version of Liberty Prime. I think that you have to take this with a grain of salt, because this is a propaganda poster by the US government appearing, in this world. So it's very likely that this is propaganda and that, that China had no such thing. But if the United States has something like Liberty Prime, it's only fair to assume that other countries would have something similar, so it's not out of the realm of reality. But this poster in particular, I would count as just propaganda and not put too much weight into it. Oblivion variables in Fallout 3, I'm not quite sure what they're getting at here with the Iceberg entry, but what I can only assume, based on, looking these kind of things up, is that the Gamebryo engine was used for Oblivion and then it was used for Fallout 3, so there's going to be a lot of cross stuff there. But honestly, I don't see a whole lot of reuse of things in Fallout 3 that I see in Oblivion. I think they did a lot of work to make all new textures, make all new objects, all that kind of stuff. Now, is there going to be some crossover? I imagine so. You see it with Fallout 3 and New Vegas, so I imagine you'd see it with Oblivion and Fallout 3, but I'm not quite sure what to pinpoint here other than the Gamebryo engine when it comes to the variables. But yeah, it was made on the Gamebryo engine back then. They got the rights to Fallout 3, or to Fallout rather, and then made Fallout 3 on that same engine. So that's probably why we would see some similar variables if they're showing up. Todd Howard has never played Tactics or Fallout Brotherhood of Steel is likely because Todd probably went out and said that he had never played those two games. I don't see a big deal with that. kind of missing something when it comes to tactics, in my opinion. It can be quite fun, and it has an interesting story. Fallout Brotherhood of Steel is an interesting game in itself, where it's like, it can be fun, it can be interesting, but nothing about it screams the Fallout world to me, besides they throw it in your face over and over again that it's a Fallout game. You see like banners for the first game's art like around but regardless, who cares? Todd Howard played Fallout and Fallout 2 all through college and really enjoyed them, and now makes, directs those games, or at least did for Fallout 3 and 4, I'm pretty sure. So who cares? I know a lot of people haven't played Tactics or Fallout Brotherhood of Steel, because most of the people I talk to haven't played them. So I imagine that a lot more outside of my circle haven't played them. I've played them because I played Tactics back when it came out, but I played Fallout Brotherhood of Steel because I had to. I was like, oh, I have to play this game. And even though it's bad, it's still a part of that little Fallout family, so it's just... But in my opinion, it doesn't matter if Todd Howard has played those two offshoot Fallout games. Exodus's canon is referring to a 2008 role-playing tabletop game that was originally going to be set in the Fallout universe, but because of some dealings with the original Fallout Interplay Entertainment property holders and Bethesda's copyright on the series, everything inside of it that involved Fallout was removed. It has an interesting story and pretty good reviews. It still follows pretty much the same lexicon of Fallout, but it also ties in some Mayan prophecies and like Nostradamus into the world shit, and includes references to like the War on Terror that many of people my age remember growing up through. It's like I said, pretty highly reviewed, but again, I wouldn't say that it's canon, because it was going to take place in the Fallout universe and now doesn't, was completely stripped of all of its Fallout properties, so no, it's not canon. The last entry in Tier 4 is Project V13 is in development. No, it is not. We are now entering the 5th and last tier of this iceberg. Klingons in Van Buren was actually a joke that was put into the design documents. There was no really substantial, thing that was going to happen with Klingons. It was just something that was thrown into the design docs as a joke, and so people started speculating. The next entry is Bethesda stole the rights to Fallout from Interplay. No, they did not. Next we have Knights of the Old Republic 2 used Van Buren design documents. I can't for the life of me find anything that shows any evidence that this is the case. I personally haven't played KOTOR 2 or the first one really. I've only played a couple hours of the first one, so maybe if I had spent some more time with KOTOR 2, I'd be able to tell you, oh, there's similarities here and there, but there's nothing online, nobody talking about this online. Chris Avalon has talked about various parts of KOTOR 2, so it's regardless, I'm not seeing anything that shows that that's the case. There's probably some similarities in the stories. That's where people are getting this idea. The original Van Buren PnP files seem to refer to some games that were made by Black Isle to test the first iteration of rules for Van Buren, the canceled Fallout 3 project. Some of this was posted by Chris Avalon, some of the little cards that they used in DICE, but we don't really know a whole lot about it other than the fact that they were testing how things were going to work with this new Fallout game that they were working on. This also could be two games, because when Chris Avalon posted it, he said that it was from the two Fallout PnP games at Interplay, and that they weren't related to Josh Sawyer's Fallout RPG. So regardless, we see Vault-Boy in some of these cards, some Doctor cards, stuff like that. But this is really all we know about it. It sounds like they were going to, kind of test how the game was going to play, and they were doing it on tabletop because that's kind of how you did things back then. And it was probably fun to do so. But that's the original Van Buren PnP. The first Battle of Hoover Dam being lost due to an orgy is coming from speculation that the original story for the first Battle of Hoover Dam is that the NCR ambushed the Legion as they were drinking and having an orgy, which led to them losing the first battle. There's not a whole lot out there about this information, but there's enough people talking about it. Well, there's a few things that we can find, but it mainly, when you search for something like this, it mainly just brings up Fallout icebergs. So I don't know that there's a whole lot of weight to this. It could have been passed around through the devs as an idea of like the lore behind that first battle, but I'm not seeing much of anything else relating to this topic. Next up, we have Van Buren is in development. This is partially true. In an official way, no, it's not in development at all by anybody official. But Adam Lacko, somebody that I mentioned earlier in the video, is working on a game based on the design documents of Van Buren. It's a slow process, something that he's working on in his spare time, but it is still technically in development. We also have a few other people making mods and such that would coincide with Van Buren's design documents. So in that form, it's in development, but officially, no, it's not. And to finish off the iceberg here, we have Chris Avalon purposely broke the peaceful Deathclaw ending in Fallout 2 to remove them from the setting. I believe this. Me and Chris Avalon kind of have the same opinion when it comes to these talking Deathclaws. I don't think they should exist at all. I do like Goris as a companion. I always have a soft spot for him. But regardless, I think it's a silly idea. I'm glad that they can't be saved. If Chris Avalon did do this, it's one of the best things he's ever done for the entire franchise, is killing all those fucking talking Deathclaws in Vault 13 and Fallout 2. So if he planned for it to be broken so that no one could ever get that peaceful ending, good. I'm happy. But I've heard this rumor for a while. I don't know if it's concrete, proven, but it would track and it would make sense, and I would thank him for it. That has been this Fallout iceberg that I was able to find. I'm down to cover more if people like this format. It's just a little unscripted, going through the list and being like, oh, hey, here's this, here's that. So if you liked it, thank you for checking it out. And if you made it this far in the video, you're a hero to me. I hope to see you on the next one. It has been Mantis.